With the new year here, we all seem to think that we have to set resolutions and produce more. On today's show, we'll be talking about neuroscience and thriving with Dr. Kain Samuel. She'll address why just trying to do more is not the best resolution. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about unlocking the resilient leader in you. As we begin a new year, I find myself less interested in resolutions and more curious about meaning, less compelled by goals and more drawn to questions. In this country, the new year carries a powerful mythology. It's supposed to be a reset, a fresh start, a moment when effort and optimism combine to produce something better. And yet, for many capable, accomplished people, a new year also brings fatigue, a quiet reckoning, a sense that pushing harder, being stronger, and doing more of what once worked simply isn't working anymore. This year, I know that I can't push harder. I am so strong. No, let me say that differently. I am as strong as I want to be. And doing more is no longer possible after a 10-hour day. That realization is unsettling. For me, but how about for you? But what if strength, as we've defined it, has reached its limit? What if the next chapter doesn't ask us to be tougher, but truer? Not more driven, but more grounded. Today's conversation is an invitation to explore that possibility, and Dr. Kain Samuel and I will talk about why being strong stops working at a certain point, and why thriving begins not with effort, but with safety. Oh, we're going to explore that word. And why feeling enough, something many of us postponed until everything else was handled, may be the doorway to the life we actually want. This won't be a scripted conversation today. It will be just that, a conversation. One shaped by curiosity, reflection, and shared wisdom. So before we begin, I invite you to take a breath. Oh, not to prepare, not to improve, just to arrive. Let's start the year not by demanding more of ourselves, but by listening more closely. And I am incredibly excited to bring on one of my favorite guests, Kain Samuel. Kain, so good to have you back.
Oh, so wonderful to be with you, Madelyn. I'm just thrilled. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. Well, let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Dr. Kain Samuel is an international rapid business transformation coach and wealth mindset coach who is passionate about assisting individuals in identifying and clearing their inner blocks to achieving great success. Kain, I love that mission. I really do. She was in the Navy as a helicopter pilot, and that's totally awesome to me. And prior to that, she becoming a coach, she was a vice president at a global website operations at $1 billion company. She holds a PhD in positive neuropsychology. She is the author of numerous books, including Increase Your Abundance, Starting Today, and Wealth Creation for Coaches. Okay, Kamin, you're in. Let's get going.
Let's jump right in.
Thank you. I'm curious. I talked a little bit about how I feel about this New Year's. How do you feel about this New Year's?
Well, I think come off of another year of pushing, of striving, of, I've just been promoting the film and Courage to Thrive, which is really this inside out approach to creating greater wealth and success, not from doing, right, which you were talking about, but really from who we being? Are we aligned with ourselves? So as I start the new year, I have to reset myself and really um, get back into my own alignment of what is it that I want to create, not from my head, but what's in alignment with my heart and what wants to come through me next, not from pushing.
I love that perspective. It resonates so much with where I am. Gosh,
I think so many people are.
I think so. Uh, and if you've pursued it for many years as your career, you finally say, okay, now I've done that, done that, done that, done that on that path. Is there another? Is there another possibility? Yeah.
And I hear a lot of times from, especially from women, like, I want to, like, when I say the word thrive, they're like, I don't want to strive. I just want to sit here for a moment. I'm like, thriving doesn't mean always moving to your next level. It really is about like, oh, can I just look around and appreciate all that I've already created, own the resilience that I have the courage to see myself as perfect, whole, and complete.
Oh, I as you said that, I thought about something, and you're going to laugh when I say it. I think the other day, my husband and I have lived in this house for 50 years, and I love my house, and I have collected art and pieces, and and the other day I'm walking through and saying, "Wow, this is really cool," and I just felt a real sense of contentment. And it was taking me 50 years to get here, but it doesn't matter. I'm here now. So I think that's part of what you're saying. Am I right?
I love that you tied that into contentment, because striving means out of balance, not in content. And it's like thriving comes from this ability, like, can I own where I am? Can I feel safe where I am? When we are in that mode, we can actually hear what wants to come through us. So you being able to appreciate your home and all that you've created, there's a deliciousness in that. Is there not, like, oh, because everything has been selected by you and your husband.
It's right. It has been.
And so it fills you, right? And so as even as I look behind you, like, all of those things are very, carefully constructed for you of what you want to see reflected back to you, even when you're on screen. And so that ability for us to see ourselves, to own who we are, own what we've been up to in life, is part of that thriving. How do we flourish?
How do we flourish? Yeah. Yeah. I think that we have in I'll call it our society. That may mean this country, it may mean the world. I don't care however you want to describe it. But we tend to talk about it only in terms of accomplishments
Yeah.
external to us, and in business or money or something like that. Whereas there's so much that is within us.
It's within us, and it's about our positive focus, in even in like even in contentment, we can hold a positive focus for our future
Yeah.
without a lot of, like, grit. Like, the
Oh,
age of grit is like, I've been resilient, I've been gritty. I want to, like, enjoy my life now,
yeah.
like, especially as I get older, is like, how much is enough? And I've had to ask myself that question time and time again. But it's like, oh, like, can I even just give myself a pause at the beginning of the year to just celebrate all that I've survived, all
Yeah.
of that I've created, all that I've done, and then shift into, like, is that enough? Is something else want to come through? But it's in that spaciousness inside of us that we get to steep in that knowing.
Yeah. That's so exciting when you say the spaciousness within us, because I've often talked about this kind of issue, and I say that, and I, this in particular has to do with when I work with married couples, and there's, I say that to them that, humans are infinite within. You're not going to get to the end, so you're going to discover more things about your spouse and yourself all the time, and it's not going to stop. So love that fact that you brought that up and reminded me of that.
I love that you shared that about, working with couples, because my husband and I have been married 14 years, 16 years together. And there are different phases, right? As we have moved into this phase, where we may have been aligned much more as almost carbon copies when we first got together. As we get older, there might be a different way of seeing things because our ages are different, both our ages, and there's a difference in our age between us. And so it's an opportunity, again, to tune in and double down on the relationship, double down on how do I choose to learn a different communication so that the relationship can thrive, and not think that we're going to be stagnant. I love that you said that, we are infinite, and each person being infinite means at some point we have to calibrate to that infiniteness together.
Yeah. And if you really work at it, you'll never be bored because there's always something new. I'm a person who worries about being bored all the time because I bore easily. But
Yeah.
in my marriage, this has never been a boring thing because we keep probing. Well, I want to come back to our primary topic, although I love this, and I love the fact that we're already moving around.
Yeah.
You talk about strength and that being strong sometimes just doesn't work. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, thank you for that question, because again, going back to, grit, how much grit, like, being a pilot, or, even being in corporate or owning my own business, we have to be strong. We have to gut it out. There are days when we don't want to do things, but we have to do them. And so we can look at strength from two different perspectives. We have these superpower strengths that I love to talk with people about, that are all about flow. But then there's our resilience strength, which is all about, making it happen, pushing, achieving, striving. And so finding our balance between those two is really important, because when we're in flow, and a lot of the work from the positive psychology side of the work that I do, coming from the uh, Values in Action Institute, the VIA, character strengths, is really about where am I in flow? When I am grateful, I'm in flow. When I am in learning, I am in flow. And so that ability for us to then see when we're out of flow, how quickly can I get back to that? And not from a place of, like, again, striving, doing, but when I can learn something, right, I can get right back to it. Right. And so for you, yours is when you're in your own curiosity, when you have such a high level of appreciation of beauty and excellence, because we've worked on this together. And the ability for us to really steep in those things, like, when I get out of balance, where is my natural flow coming from? So there's the gutting it out strength, but then there are the strengths that are flow related, where I can get back into harmony and be more in alignment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, but it suggests another question about this,
Mm-hmm.
which is you talked about resilience and strength, and in a way, they're survival strategies.
Yes.
They're not necessarily growth strategies. Am I hearing you right on that?
Yes. And they can be growth. You can be resilient and grow, but it's also, what is that underlying pushing energy that it's coming from? What am I trying to prove? what am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to, how am I trying to be in the world, right? There's a gutting out strength to that. And there's growth. We can still grow there, but there's generally, we're not in our flow base sometimes where we're really like sitting in like, well, I can appreciate the excellence around me and then choose to accelerate from that, not from I have to or I should or because somebody
Mm,
else told me I should do something.
got it.
What did you just connect there?
Oh, well, a couple of things. I do work in resilience, and to me, resilience lies in that space where you actually make the decision. Something hits, and you go, okay, what am I going to do? And what occurred to me as you were speaking, and I would call this resilience advanced, because at first you you begin to be aware of what the possibilities are and knowing that you have to make a decision, and so you make a good logical decision. But the more you look into this, the more you recognize that your values are operative. And when you can make that decision in relationship to your values, I think that speaks to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're tapping into that instead of, well, I've got to do this in order to get this position or whatever.
Yes, and so when you're because again, these kind of the values we have that are in action in our life, if we're making decision and we're leveraging those as we move forward in what we want to create next in our lives, then there's a purposefulness to that resilience, not just survival. I'm not
Yes.
just trying to overcome whatever is in front of me.
In your work, what signals tell you that someone is capable but is no longer thriving?
Mm, such a beautiful question. And I think it's really because there's a level of frustration that starts to show up, right? They might be saying, I want this, but yeah, but I can't have that, or I can't make time for that. Um, they're forgetting who they are. They're forgetting that how powerful they are and not coming from strengths. And really starting to think about, if they're not thriving, they're not thinking that, like, I don't see their eyes light up. Like that's
Yes.
what lights me up is when somebody is lit up about that next opportunity, goal, intention for their life. So if they're not lit up about it, that's where I want to question and really check in the motive behind what they've chosen, right? Because that can be generally it's either somebody else chose it, there's a should, there's a belief that they're not enough because so many of us don't really live in our enoughness. Like I can't do that. Or they're not seeing, especially with women, they don't own the full spectrum of their bio, their whole biography of what they've accomplished. And so many times when they're not moving into thriving, it's like they'll tell me, well, I'm new at something. I'm a new coach. And I'm like, didn't you run 4 companies? Or didn't you say that the team that you just left to go do consultancy was 300 people? Didn't you help anybody in that organization? But we tend to compartmentalize and put our lives in these boxes and not realize that some of our resilience and some of our strengths comes from remembering who we were
No
and what we've
question.
done.
I agree with you 100% on that. And that's part to me, that's part of discovering who you are is to think back to those moments when you succeeded, when you overcame something, uh, when you were blissfully happy. I mean, all these things help you remember what was active at that moment, including yourself.
Yes, and in your work, even when you talk about the couples work, if we go there, it's like sometimes we forget what we've already overcome. We've adapted to,
Yes.
my husband and I were talking about, you can acclimate in that adaptation and and be like, okay, I'll just go through this, versus really like, oh, what would I love to see? We have to keep iterating. I've talked to some people recently who are like, I want to be married. I'm like, it's not for the faint of heart. Like, there's some work in there. And how do we start to see it from strengths? Like, we get to work on that. We get to be with the love of our life, and see it as a joy to expand into, from this place of,
Yeah.
can we thrive at this next level? It can't
Yeah.
stay the same ever.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting statement. And I like it. I am very much inspired by nature. And nature does not stay the same. Never does. It may look like a calm pond out there, but it's not. It's teeming with life. I mean, there's movement, there's change all the time, there's growth. Uh, yeah, yeah, good.
And when
Well,
you think about how long you and your husband have been in your home for 50 years. How long have you been married?
52 years.
So if you think of 52 years, how many iterations of yourself and of your marriage have there been, that we have that you've had to really choose in to your own level of thriving?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's such an amazing question as you ask it. I mean, I don't want to use this as to talk about that, but there have been moments where I've said, you know, what I am the judgment that I am applying in this case is the judgment I felt as a child growing up. I don't need to do that anymore. I can choose, and those are the kinds of iterations that come to my mind as you say that. Yeah,
Yes, and the reason I ask you that question is because most people can look at us and say, "Oh, well, you're so trained and you have this great marriage," and not realize that, oh no, we have to we have to work at it too. There
yeah.
have been times when my husband will call me by my father's name because I'll do something like my dad, and it's like, okay,
I love it.
right? And so I have to see the humor in it, as
Yeah.
I kind of like, okay, well, that
Okay.
is true that I'm actually operating from that. But we don't realize that a lot of that limits us in our life
Yeah.
is from that childhood,
Yeah.
is from a misunderstanding, what we heard, what we took it to mean, and then we make it about what we can do. And then that hinders our ability to thrive. And we don't even know that somebody else is kind of in our energy field.
That's right. That's right. Hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, as you're saying this, it is impossible for any child to grow up in a completely expansive position where everything is perfect. That can't happen because you live in a particular geographic area, in a house with, I mean, you can't do everything. You can't. This is exciting. This is really exciting because it says to me, hey, that's the human condition. We shouldn't be worried about this so much. We should learn how to explore it. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
And I will say that many of my clients will, have in the past will say, my sister, my mother, and all of these things. And especially because they'll be thinking that they should be my friend and they should be nicer to me. And and I'm one of four siblings. I'm like, little Lord of the Flies every once in a while. And this idea of that, though, is, I kind of look at it as a shell, like a chick in a shell or a butterfly in a cocoon. If you tear the cocoon, that butterfly will not thrive.
Will not go
Same
on.
with a chicken and egg, right? And this ability for us to use those muscles, to gain that resilience, to gain our ability to grit our way through things, well, that's the core of who we are. Now, this whole other level of, well, what does it mean to thrive and flourish?
Yeah.
Well, how do I have optimism if I may not have a lot of optimism? Like, how do I start to see the world differently, especially in this day and age where we have to take ownership of our own creativity when the outside world may not reflect what we would
Yeah.
want to see.
Yeah. I think that today many people feel unsafe. Let me say that differently. They just feel discomfort and they don't know necessarily where it's coming from. You talk about feeling safe. I wonder if you would talk about that in relationship to thriving. What does that really mean?
I love that because for me it's exciting because it's a little bit different than most people will see this particular topic is because I see the current world order almost deliberately keeping us in a disabled way,
Yeah.
right? Out of stability. Their job is not right now to make us feel safe. It's actually the opposite because more can be done when we are off kilter. And the only place that safety comes from, Madeline, is inside of us. It's inside of us, in our ability to realize that there's a lot that's created for show, for what other people are going through, and we get to bring ourselves back to what is actually true for me in this moment and in the next moment, and what would I like the future to look like? What would I like to create? And the more we can double down in our view of like, oh, wait, am I safe in this moment? And that was the question I asked a lot myself when I was going through bankruptcy and foreclosure years ago. Was am I safe in this moment? Because I had learned that if I focused on the future too much, it would paralyze me. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't take the natural action that would have prevented the bankruptcy and the foreclosures. I had to realize in this moment, do I have a roof over my head or, do I have food? Am I safe? From that, and if somebody is not safe, I tell them to get to safety. Get to safety if you're not safe. But if I have those things covered, what can I create from this moment if I'm not scaring myself with the future or catastrophizing my past? And so if there's an inner safety knowing that actually I can handle whatever occurs in my life because I've already handled so many other things. It's that awakening to our present moment that I always remind my clients. We talk in the film Courage to Thrive about. I have to do on a daily basis is remember what I've already lived through, what I've already thrived through, and continue to make that my reference point. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to dig a little deeper because
Please.
your PhD is in the neuropsychology of this.
Yeah.
What's happening in the body, in our nervous systems when we feel safe or not?
Yes. So most of my clients will know if they say, I don't know how to do this. They'll be up in arms, and I'm like, it's just unfamiliar. It's just unfamiliar. The brain does not like anything that's unfamiliar. And so when it has something unfamiliar, it does go into the fight, flight, freeze, faint mode of living. And so what we want to do is start to think of how can I be safe so that how can I make my surrounding more familiar? Even in times when there are layoffs and times when there's uncertainty in the economy, all of those things we can actually control our safety inside of ourselves, especially when we remind ourselves how uh, resilient we are, how powerful we are, going back to our own inner superpowers, so that we can tell our brain, our ego that wants to return to a place of safety, that oh, this is just unfamiliar. I can learn something new. I can survive this no matter what's happening in the world.
You know, in my work, I often say to people, those places they're uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And we'd love to be comfortable. And I always say to them, never confuse comfort with safety. Comfort just means you're comfortable. It
Right.
doesn't, but from what you're saying, safety is something else. And I
Yes.
like that because you can enumerate if you think about it. And maybe it's best to think about it ahead of time before you're in the emotions
Mhm.
of a moment. What is it that makes me safe? Okay, maybe it's a bank account, maybe it's a house, a family, an extended family, whatever it is, education, a skill that you have with your hands. Those are things that make you safe. Yeah, I get to really and to hone in on those things. I like this.
Well, and I'm going to shift that just a little bit because
Okay.
most of those things that you just mentioned are external to you. Some of
Ah,
them you don't have
all
control over,
right. You're right.
right? So if safety is internal, then this ability, again, it goes back to right the core human, right? Do I have shelter, food, clothing? Those needs met? The house, yes, but there are many people who are in homes right now that are wonderful homes and they're not safe, right? And so, or they have money. They have to the average person, they have so much money and they feel unsafe. Now, in my work, many times I'll go back to the childhood and really help someone see that that lack of safety actually is being triggered by the 4 or 5 year old that you know saw something, heard something that that they are out of balance with, and not having that younger self grow up and understand that they're 40 years old, they're 70 years old now, but still operating as a 4 year old. And so we want to start to realize that we actually have, this word came up in my meditation this morning, is this mosaic of who we are. And there's all these younger ages, no matter
Yeah.
what age we are now, but they have a particular lens on our lives. We just need to know if it's driving our safety or driving our lack of safety.
Okay. This is deep. But hey, it's the beginning of 2026. We have a whole year to work on this, right?
Yes, everybody has a whole year, and it's really, I want people to start to think from, okay, am I safe in this moment?
Yeah.
Am I really, really safe? Because it's all about the present moment. When we name the external things, those are things actually outside of the present moment. In this present, delicious, spacious moment, am I safe? If I'm not, get to safety. If I am, and I can quiet my mind, and that can be through meditation, that can be just in breath work, just breathing for a few minutes, doing some box breathing, and settle our nervous system
Mm.
into this ability to see what actually, when we're quiet and we feel safe, it starts to bubble up from within us what we would like to create, what would like to happen. And what many of us end up doing is, no, I've got to take care of the kids. I've got to take care of the house. I've got to take care of my job. I've got to do all these other things. And I call it the tap, right? Like write a book, build a school, all of those things get put on a shelf for someday. And we don't realize that we could take the smallest action that would light us up and open us into who we came here to be and be of greater impact in the world.
Okay. Now, my next question is what changes when a person says, hey, I feel safe enough? What, I think you're beginning to hint at this, but talk a little bit more about what really happens to a person when they really have thought about this
Mhm.
and and have established that this is sufficient for now.
For this moment only,
Ah, for
right?
this. Okay.
If we can get ourselves into this moment, the nervous system does relax, right? The fight, flight, fear, faint responses settle down.
Mhm.
We actually, from our own creativity, we actually can start to move up in our own consciousness about what's possible for our life. Hope returns, and fear can be diminished in our whole nervous system can relax, and all the barriers that block us from moving forward start to melt away, and we can just sit in that moment. And many times, whether it's just journaling or writing, uh, just giving ourselves permission. So I also want to bring in a lot of this also that I work with my clients on is this idea of permission, giving ourselves permission to dream, to say yes to ourselves, to be honest about what it is that we are either holding back or wanting to really create. That then allows our nervous system to start to spark, and then we can move into this ability that realizes that we can change anything through neuroplasticity. Our minds have the ability to rewire for expansion, joy, whatever we want to create. And they've measured that up to the age of 97, and they could measure it further if we didn't have a paradigm that there's a small pool at 97.
Yeah.
And so that ability for us to realize, that a lot of our safety could come from just giving ourselves permission to dream, to say yes, to be honest with ourselves about what would light us up in this world and what impact we want to have.
I love to talk with you, Kamin, because you always grow the possibilities. It's sort of like, oh goodness, what I thought was here is really here.
It's really here. And let me give you an example. So after screening of Courage to Thrive one time, a moderator asked me, and this is going to go hard, a little off into it. She asked me, well, what do you say to the 300,000 Black women who have lost their jobs this year? And I said, for a subset of those, my heart goes out to everyone, right? And then on the other side of that, I deal with it the same way I deal with clients and friends who have come to me and said, I want to let you know I'm okay, but I lost my job today, and it's the economy. And I will say to them, is it the economy? And they'll say, what do you mean? And I'll say, well, I know that they're spiritual people. And I'll say, had you been hearing in your prayer time to go get your resume ready, to go do something? And invariably they'll say yes. And I'm saying, well, the economy was just a convenient way for the universe to move you off your position. If somebody chose a government job, but it kept them from living into their creativity because it was safe, it was a safe job. And I say that with all constriction because their creativity was, their actual zones of genius weren't used for that job. It's just another perspective to see, wait, I always ask for a question when someone asks me something, like they tell me something bad happened. Like, how is this here to bless you? Like, and how is this an answer to an unconscious prayer? It doesn't mean you created it. But it's the participation that if we're not living in our creativity, how do we thrive? Or are we living in a purgatory that just says, I can exist? I would love to hear your thoughts because I just gave you a whole bunch of different things at one time.
You sure did. What goes through my mind is how often we do have a dream. It's a very quiet dream. It's way in the back of your mind. and and it is in fact active. I mean, you may not dwell on it, but it's active,
Mhm.
and that's what was going through my mind. So I have to be very careful about what what I dream, even
Absolutely.
even in my quiet, sort of. Well, gee, that would be interesting.
It's a tap. It's like it doesn't let us go. It
Yeah,
doesn't stop ever. It
yeah.
doesn't stop ever if it's really ours to do. And so we could say yes now, or we could say yes later. It's
It's,
just a choice.
now, speaking of yes now or later, why do people postpone this?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Most of it's because they've got some
Ah,
fear about what it means, some fear of it being a bigger burden. Some of this work comes also from Katie Hendricks, of like this fear of like, oh, if I do that, what does it mean? Will I be successful? Will I be a failure? Will I hurt somebody? Will I abandon my family if I'm successful doing it?
yeah, yeah,
What if I can't? When I went into psychology, because I had wanted to do it for 20 years, I had researched schools and all sorts of things. But what if I go for that dream and it's not it? I've had to, and you just brought something very forward that I hadn't really addressed, even in creating a film, right? It was my dream to create a film for decades. And now that the film has been done, who am I, and what is it that I want to do now with it? And so that's where we have to actually create again and choose again. And so I have to take my own medicine, so to speak, of 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 awakening to what's driving the dream when I accomplish the dream, and then being able to reset the dream once I accomplish it.
yeah. And if people don't do that, it's a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm thinking, I, I'm going back many years when I was at the World Bank when they had a big reorganization, and a lot of people got riffed, let go. Some of those people actually would come to the bank every morning and sit in the lobby because it is the only world they knew.
Yeah.
I don't know how they actually handled it. I'm sure they eventually handled it in some way with psychological help, etc.
Mhm.
Um, but you can also think of people who retire. Do you retire? And
Yep.
people say, "Oh, well, I can now travel." Well, that's good. Do you like to travel? My husband and I have had this discussion, and neither of us like to travel. So we got to do something else. I mean, yes, we've traveled. In fact, I've traveled all over the world, but it's not a pleasure. It doesn't light my eyes up on it,
Mhm.
unless I'm going to see someone. Like I would
Right.
love to go see some friends in London. Love to go see some in Melbourne, South Africa. I mean, there's all kinds of places I would go, but to see people, but not just
Right.
to. Okay, I'm sorry. I digress.
No, because I actually think you shared that because I love to travel. I love to travel for the sake of traveling. Like I'm happy just being on a plane. Like I've always wanted to just take a long flight, just to write in the air. I love that. I love being in hotels. I love all of that. And so it's just, as you said, if we actually have to design retirement. We have to design each phase, and phases sneak up on us, right? Whether it's a layoff or a child or something happens, and we forget that we actually have the resilience to recreate
Yeah,
and not just subsist.
yeah. Okay, I I feel obliged to shift slightly to get it more focused on leadership.
Yeah. Yes.
How can leaders reconnect with desire without guilt or fear or the pressure to justify it? Talk about leadership in this particular
Well,
discussion.
let me ask you another question with that. When you
Sure.
talk about leaders reconnecting with desire, is that personal? Is it for the organization? Which part do you want the leader to reconnect
When I ask that question, I know what's going on in my head. And that is that they have been pursuing the mission, a mandate given to them.
with? Yeah.
And they know that to achieve that full mandate, they've got to do something over here, which nobody has ever talked about. And that takes real courage to move over there and do it. So that, and even though you're committed to the mandate and the mission, all right, I understand that. That's the limitations of being in leadership. Fine. And that's an intermediate leadership, middle leadership. Not executives obviously can choose new things, but there's still it takes some real fortitude to say no. I'm going to do it differently because I know it'll be better.
Thank you. And it's kind of finding their own purpose within that mandate. And so the ability for us to realize, because again, it goes sometimes back to it's unfamiliar, right? That thing over there is unfamiliar, so it feels unsafe, right? And so many times there's one principle that I tie to Dr. Joseph Murphy and the power of your subconscious mind that then I tie into my flight days, which is I call it wealth simulation. And being in a wealth simulator, because as a pilot, we had to be in the simulator a lot to learn how to fly before we actually touched a plane, right? They want us to make sure that it was familiar to us, that the instrumentation was familiar, all of that. So when I'm working with leaders and talking to them, they've got a big goal over, on the side that they have to work on that they don't know how they're going to get done. I also want them to simulate it within them when they wake up, when they're driving in, when they're in meetings, what would they be thinking about if it were accomplished? And sometimes when we're in that rehearsal, the thing we are trying to create actually informs us, right? And how that looked for me, especially like when I was growing my corporate career. I had grown up into manager, but then I wanted to be a director and then a vice president. I actually had to think, what would I be thinking if I were at that level? What would I be thinking? And then I would be getting ready in the mornings, like, hey, do that PowerPoint for your boss. And I create a PowerPoint for him and I deliver it to him. And he's like, how did you know I needed this today? And I'm like, because there's a partnership, because some of my degrees are in the spiritual realm. I have a master's in spiritual psychology and a master's in spiritual science. Is that like what we're thinking, and we've proven this in neuroscience now, what we're thinking actually changes the energy in the field, right? That if we start to think from this thing and even start to play with it's done, what would we have to have done to accomplish that? That actually informs us of, oh, we can start to take that next step. The interesting thing about a leader, and this is some work that my husband had to work with me on, which was uncomfortable. When I became a vice president, was at the leadership level, at the executive level, the predominant emotion that they want is safety. And so, and my husband, Mark Samuel, talks about when you are at that level, you are now accountable things that you are not responsible for doing.
That's right.
And so we're such good doers growing our careers. But now we got to trust the team to do something that, we don't know. And so that ability for us to realize that form of safety also drive decision making in a way that may not support the mission of the organization and the mandate. So our ability to rehearse it and to see that we can be safe accomplishing it and see ourselves winning, and what are the steps that we took to win, and see the organization thrive from what our team accomplished, that can help us bring ourselves into that mandate from a completely different aligned perspective. We are able to now see the whole team participate well and accomplish it together, and the organization win, which changes the dynamic of how hard something looks. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, very much so. Very much so. Having lived that many times.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask one final question.
Yes.
Okay, as the year begins, what's the one question that listeners can carry with them as kind of an invitation rather than a demand to deal with what we were talking about?
Brilliant question. The one thing, and I think for me, it always goes back to kind of what's the quality of the year that I want to have. So for me, looking at a quality, and it's interesting because it's been the quality for many years, and then suddenly created the film, was courage. Do I have the courage to show up for myself? Do I have the courage to say yes? Do I have the courage to listen? Do I have the courage to slow down? And there have been years of joy, and that may have come off of a tough year. But having a forward momentum quality that then opens, because sometimes I'll use expansion, or what do I want to experience more of? And I'll pair words together like courage and expansion so that it's joyful for me. So as people are starting this year, if they could just slow down and think throughout this year, what do they want in December 2026 to look back and say, oh my gosh, yes. It's like, what is that energy that propelled them to answer their own dreams, their own desires, to say yes to themselves, to raise their hand for something new that they thought, you know what, it is uncomfortable and it's unfamiliar, and I've done both of those things before, and I can try again. The other aspect of this is I had to move in my own life to an experimentation oriented life. So it's not a right, wrong. I'm learning. I'm a learning organism every day. And that, taking that quality in with that perspective, means that I can't lose. I can't fail, because there is no failure. I'm just trying things, and I'll try again and I'll recover. And so that it allows for that a love for self, safety, ownership, joy, and possibilities.
What a conversation. I mean, I'm tired, but in an exuberant kind of way. It's like playing a game of soccer that we won. Oh, gosh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's just a pleasure always to talk with you.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself.
Is that it's important to recognize when life is enough. My final thought and question to you is, what might become possible this year if you stopped proving your strength and started trusting your enoughness? I want to thank you for joining me today. And of course, I always hope that you have learned something new. And it doesn't matter if it's just one little thing, still something new. I'm Madelyn Blair. wishing you infinite possibilities as you release and unlock the resilient leader in you.